Humiliated in the public square, she was brought in silence by a masked tribal chief. The dusty streets of Copper Creek stretched endlessly under the merciless Arizona sun. Sarah Mackenzie stood on the wooden platform in the town square, her once pristine blue dress now torn and stained with mud. The jeering crowd below seemed to blur together, faces twisted with cruel satisfaction as they watched her humiliation unfold. "What am I bid for this fine specimen?" hollered Sheriff Daniels, his voice carrying over the desert wind. "Strong back, good with horses, and she can read and write." Sarah's hands trembled as she kept her gaze fixed on the distant mountain. 3 months ago, she had been a respected schoolteacher. Now, with her father's debts unpaid and no relatives to claim her, she stood as human collateral in a town that had forgotten mercy. The bidding started low. Local ranchers called out amounts like she was livestock, their voices mixing with the laughter of onlookers who had gathered for the spectacle. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to remember her mother's lullabies. Anything to escape this moment. $500. The voice cut through the chaos like a blade, deep, steady, and spoken with quiet authority. The crowd fell silent, heads turning to locate the speaker. A figure emerged from the shadows between the general store and the saloon. Tall and broad-shouldered, he wore traditional Apache clothing mixed with settlers' boots. Most striking was the painted wooden mask that covered the upper half of his face, intricate designs in red and black that seemed to dance in the flickering light. "500 going once!" Sheriff Daniels called, his voice uncertain now. No one had expected such a bid, especially not from someone like this. "600!" called out rancher Tom Bradley, his face flushed with alcohol and anger. "I ain't losing to no savage." The masked man stepped closer to the platform. $1,000, gold. He reached into a leather pouch and poured golden coins into his palm, letting them catch the sunlight. The crowd gasped. It was more money than most had seen in years. Sarah finally looked down at him. Through the eye holes of his mask, she saw dark eyes that held neither cruelty nor pity, just a quiet intensity that made her breath catch. "Sold to the Apache," Sheriff Daniels declared, unable to hide his relief at the unexpected windfall. The masked man approached the platform as the crowd began to disperse. Their entertainment concluded. He extended his hand to help Sarah down, and she noticed his fingers were calloused from honest work, not soft like the town's corrupt officials. "My name is Running Wolf," he said quietly, his English precise despite a slight accent. "You have nothing to fear from me." Sarah studied his face, what she could see of it. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you pay so much?" Running Wolf was quiet for a long moment, watching the last of the townspeople disappear into the saloon. "Because I have seen what happens to those who have no one to speak for them, and because—" He paused, his voice dropping lower. "Because I know what it means to lose everything." The wagon ride away from Copper Creek passed in tense silence. Sarah sat beside Running Wolf as he guided 2 sturdy horses along a narrow canyon trail. The landscape grew wilder with each mile, red rocks towering above them like ancient sentinels. "Where are we going?" Sarah finally asked as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "To my ranch," Running Wolf replied, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. 20 miles north, in the valley beyond Eagle's Rest. Sarah studied his profile. "You live alone?" "With my sister Maria and her children, and several men who work the cattle." The mention of other people eased some of Sarah's tension. "Are you really Apache?" Running Wolf's hands tightened slightly on the reins. "My mother was Apache. My father was a Spanish missionary who came to the territory 30 years ago. I am what some call a half-breed, unwelcome in both worlds." "Is that why you wear the mask?" He was quiet for so long that Sarah thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said, "There are many reasons for masks, Miss Mackenzie. Sometimes they protect us from others. Sometimes they protect others from us." As darkness fell, they made camp beside a small stream. Running Wolf built a fire with practiced efficiency while Sarah gathered water. The flames danced between them as they shared jerky and hard biscuits. "What happened to your family?" Running Wolf asked gently. "How did you end up on that platform?" Sarah stared into the fire, memories flooding back. "My father was the town banker. He made some bad investments, loans to people who couldn't pay them back. When the railroad company demanded their money, She paused, struggling with the words. He took his own life, rather than face the shame. Running Wolf's expression softened. And the debts became yours. The town council said I had to pay what he owed, or face prison. But there was no way. The amount was impossible for a school teacher's salary, so they came up with their own solution. Her voice turned bitter. Sell me to the highest bidder like a piece of property. The law in these territories can be harsh, Running Wolf said, especially for those without power or protection. Sarah looked across the fire at him. What about you? What made you what you are? Running Wolf removed his hat, running his fingers through his dark hair. The mask remained in place, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. I was educated in a mission school until I was 16, learned to read and write, studied scripture and European philosophy. I thought I could build a bridge between the two worlds, help my mother's people and the settlers understand each other. What changed? The Apache Wars. When the fighting started, neither side wanted a bridge. The cavalry saw me as a threat because of my Apache blood. My mother's people saw me as a traitor because of my education. I lost friends on both sides, watched good people die for nothing. Sarah heard the pain in his voice and felt her own walls beginning to crumble. How did you end up with a ranch? I saved money from trading horses and cattle, found a valley where the water was good and the grass grew thick, built something new away from the hatred. He looked at her directly, a place where people could start over. The fire crackled between them, and for the first time since her father's death, Sarah felt something other than despair. Is that what you're offering me? A chance to start over? If you want it, Running Wolf said simply, but the choice is yours. I will not force you to stay. Sarah pulled her shawl tighter against the night air. And if I choose to leave, then I will give you money and a horse, and you can go wherever you wish. But know this, the world beyond these mountains is not kind to women alone. You would be trading one kind of danger for another. They sat in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Sarah asked, what would you expect from me if I stayed? Help my sister with the children, teach them to read and write, help manage the household. He paused. Nothing more than that. You would have your own room, your own space, your own life. And in return, food, shelter, safety, and perhaps in time, something closer to freedom than you've known. Sarah studied his masked face in the firelight. Despite everything that had happened, despite the strangeness of her situation, she felt safer with this mysterious man than she had with anyone in Copper Creek. I'll try, she said quietly. For now, I'll try. Running Wolf nodded, and she thought she saw the hint of a smile beneath the mask. That's all anyone can ask. The Broken Arrow Ranch sat in a valley so beautiful it took Sarah's breath away. Green pastures stretched between red canyon walls, and a clear stream wound through the property like a silver ribbon. Cattle grazed peacefully, while horses ran free in fenced corrals. The main house was built from adobe and timber, with a wide porch that offered shade from the desert sun. Smaller buildings dotted the landscape, a barn, bunkhouse, and workshop, all constructed with the same careful attention to detail. It's beautiful, Sarah breathed as their wagon crested the hill overlooking the ranch. It took 5 years to build, Running Wolf said with quiet pride. Every brick, every beam placed with our own hands. A woman emerged from the house as they approached, petite and graceful, with long black hair braided down her back. 2 children peeked out from behind her skirts, their dark eyes wide with curiosity. Maria, Running Wolf called, switching to Spanish. This is Sarah Mackenzie. Maria stepped forward, her expression warm but cautious. Welcome to our home, she said in accented English. I am Maria Santos. These are my children, Diego and Elena. Sarah climbed down from the wagon, her legs stiff from the long ride. Thank you for having me. I know this must be strange. Strange times call for strange solutions, Maria said with a gentle smile. Come, you must be tired and hungry. The inside of the house was cool and inviting, with thick walls that kept out the desert heat. Colorful woven rugs covered the floors, and the furniture was simple but well made. Everything spoke of a home built with love and care. I've prepared a room for you, Maria said, leading Sarah down a hallway. "It's not much, but it's yours." The room was small but comfortable, with a bed covered in a bright quilt, a wooden dresser, and a window that looked out over the valley. Sarah sat on the bed, fighting back tears. "The children will be excited to have a teacher," Maria said, settling into a chair by the window. "They've been learning from me, but I never had much schooling myself." "How old are they?" "Diego is 8. Elena is 6. They're good children, but they need more than I can give them." Maria's expression grew serious. "My husband died 2 years ago, a riding accident. Without my brother's protection, we would have lost everything." Sarah looked toward the door where Running Wolf had disappeared. "He seems like a good man." "He is, but he carries heavy burdens." Maria's voice dropped. "The mask, it's not just for show. He was hurt badly during the wars. Not just his face, but his spirit. He trusts very few people. Why did he buy me?" Maria was quiet for a moment. "He sees too much of himself in others who are cast out, and perhaps," she smiled mysteriously, "perhaps he needs someone to remind him that healing is possible." That evening, the family gathered around a large wooden table for dinner. Running Wolf had removed his hat, but kept the mask in place. Sarah found herself sneaking glances at him, trying to read his expressions through the eye holes. "Miss Sarah," Diego said suddenly, "do you know stories? Mama tells us stories, but they're always the same ones." Sarah smiled. "I know lots of stories. What kind do you like?" "Adventure stories, with horses and cowboys and treasure." "Diego," Maria chided gently, "let Miss Sarah eat her dinner." "It's all right," Sarah said. "I'll tell you a story after we eat, if that's okay with your mother." The children's faces lit up, and Sarah felt something warm bloom in her chest. It had been months since she'd had students, since she'd felt useful. After dinner, Running Wolf excused himself to check on the horses. Sarah sat with the family in the living room, Elena curled up in her lap as she told stories about brave pioneers and hidden valleys. Maria worked on her sewing, smiling at the children's gasps and exclamations. "They like you," Maria said later after the children had been put to bed. "It's been a long time since they've been this excited about learning." Sarah stood by the window looking out at the star-filled sky. "I like them too. This whole place, it feels like a dream after everything that's happened." "Dreams can become reality," Maria said softly, "but only if we're brave enough to believe in them." "Your brother, is he always so guarded?" Maria joined her at the window. "He wasn't always. Before the wars, he was different. He laughed more, trusted more easily. But when you've been betrayed by both sides, it changes you." "Just what happened to his face?" "A cavalry patrol caught him trying to negotiate peace between the tribes and the soldiers. They thought he was a spy. The beating left him changed." Maria's voice hardened. "The mask hides scars that go deeper than skin." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. Few people do. He's built a good life here, but he's built it alone. Perhaps that's why he brought you home, to remind himself that not everyone is an enemy." Outside, Sarah could see Running Wolf in the corral, working with a young horse. Even from a distance, she could see the patience in his movements, the gentle way he approached the skittish animal. "He's different from what I expected," she admitted. "What did you expect?" Sarah thought about the moment on the platform, the way the crowd had reacted to him. "I expected anger, violence. Instead, I found kindness." "The kindness is real," Maria said, "but so is the anger. He's just learned to control it, to use it for protection rather than destruction." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the man in the mask work with the horse. Slowly, gently, he won the animal's trust until it was eating from his hand. "He's good at healing broken things," Maria observed. "Perhaps that's what he saw in you, something that could be healed rather than destroyed." Sarah touched the window glass, her reflection ghost-like in the darkness. "I don't know if I can be healed. I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore." "Trust takes time," Maria said, "but it starts with small moments, like choosing to tell stories to children you just met, like accepting kindness from a stranger, and like wearing a mask to hide your pain." Maria smiled sadly. "Sometimes, but masks can also be prisons. The question is whether you're brave enough to take them off." 3 weeks passed in a rhythm Sarah had never experienced. She woke each morning to the sound of cattle lowing and horses nickering in the corrals. After breakfast, she taught Diego and Elena their letters and numbers, watching their faces light up with each new discovery. The afternoons were spent helping Maria with household tasks, learning to cook over an open fire and mend clothes by hand. The work was hard but satisfying in a way her previous life had never been. Running Wolf remained polite but distant, speaking to her only when necessary. Sarah found herself watching him from the window as he worked with the horses, noting the patience in his movements, the way the animals responded to his quiet authority. "He's breaking that stallion," Maria explained one afternoon as they watched him work with a magnificent black horse. "It came to us wild, but he sees something in it worth saving. How long does it take? Depends on the horse. Some trust quickly, others take months, but he never gives up." Sarah wondered if Maria's words carried a deeper meaning. That evening, a commotion outside brought them all to the porch. 3 men on horseback had ridden into the yard, their faces hard with anger. Sarah recognized them immediately, ranchers from Copper Creek. "Running Wolf!" called Tom Bradley, the same man who had bid against him at the auction. "We've come for the woman!" Running Wolf emerged from the barn, his movements calm and deliberate. "She's not your concern anymore, Bradley. I paid for her fair and square. That was before we knew what she'd stolen." Bradley's voice carried across the yard. "Sheriff found out she took money from the bank before her daddy died. She's a thief." Sarah's blood ran cold. It was a lie, but she knew how these men operated. They wanted her back, and they'd create any excuse to get her. "That's not true," she called out, stepping forward despite Maria's restraining hand. "Course it's true," sneered another man. "We got witnesses." Running Wolf moved to stand between Sarah and the mounted men. "Even if it were true, which I doubt, she's under my protection now. You have no authority here." "We got a warrant," Bradley said, pulling out a folded paper. "Signed by the territorial judge." "Let me see it." Bradley hesitated, then threw the paper down. Running Wolf picked it up and read it carefully. Sarah could see the tension in his shoulders. "This warrant is for theft of $500, Running Wolf said slowly. "Strange coincidence that it's exactly the amount you bid for her." "Money's money," Bradley said. "She owes it to the town." "Then I'll pay it." Running Wolf's voice was steady. $500, and you leave her be." "It ain't about the money anymore," the third man spoke up. "It's about justice. She needs to face what she done." Sarah saw the trap closing around her. These men weren't interested in justice. They wanted to humiliate her further, to drag her back to face whatever punishment they'd invented. "I won't go," she said firmly. "I didn't steal anything, and I won't be your scapegoat." Bradley's face darkened. "Then we'll take you." 3 more riders appeared from behind the barn, ranch hands who worked for Running Wolf. They were armed and looked ready for trouble. "I think you gentlemen should leave," Running Wolf said quietly, "before this gets out of hand." "You threatening us, savage?" The word hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah saw Running Wolf's hands clench into fists, saw the way his breathing changed, but his voice remained calm. "I'm giving you a choice. Ride away now or face the consequences of trespassing on my land." "Your land?" Bradley laughed harshly. "You don't own nothing. You're just a half-breed playing at being a white man." "Oh, Tom Bradley!" Maria's voice cut through the tension. "You remember what happened the last time you came here uninvited?" Bradley's face went pale. Whatever had happened before, it had left an impression. "This ain't over," he said, wheeling his horse around. "We'll be back with more men." "You do that," Running Wolf said. "But remember, out here, the law is what we make it." The 3 men rode away, but their threats lingered in the air like smoke. Sarah felt her newfound peace crumbling around her. "They'll be back," she said quietly. "And next time they'll bring the sheriff, maybe even soldiers." Running Wolf removed his hat, running his fingers through his hair. The mask made his expression unreadable. "Let them come," he said. "This is my land, and you're under my protection." "I won't be the cause of violence," Sarah said firmly. "I won't let people get hurt because of me. And I won't let them take you back to face their false justice." Maria stepped between them. "There might be another way." They both turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" Running Wolf asked. "Marriage," Maria said simply. If Sarah were your wife, she'd be beyond their reach. Married women can't be held responsible for debts incurred before marriage. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. I couldn't. I wouldn't. It would be in name only, Running Wolf said quickly. To protect you, nothing more. You would do that. Risk everything for someone you barely know. Running Wolf was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I've seen what happens to people who have no one to protect them. I won't let it happen again. Sarah looked around the ranch, at the home she'd begun to love, at the children who had started to trust her, at the man who had already saved her once. If I agree, she said carefully, what would change? Nothing, Running Wolf said. You would have legal protection, but everything else would remain the same. And if someday you wanted to marry someone else, then we would find a way to arrange that too. Sarah studied his masked face, trying to read his intentions. Why would you do this for me? Because everyone deserves a chance at freedom, he said simply, and because I believe you're worth saving. The next morning, they rode to the small town of Mesa Verde, where a justice of the peace performed a simple ceremony. Sarah wore her best dress, and Running Wolf had cleaned his clothes and boots, though he kept the mask in place. Do you, Sarah Mackenzie, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Sarah looked at Running Wolf, this strange man who had bought her freedom and now offered her protection. I do. Do you, Running Wolf Santos, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Arizona, I pronounce you husband and wife. The justice of the peace looked expectantly at Running Wolf, clearly waiting for him to kiss the bride. Instead, Running Wolf simply nodded and extended his hand to Sarah. Thank you, he said quietly, for trusting me. Sarah took his hand, surprised by the warmth of his touch. Thank you for saving me. Again. As they rode back to the ranch, Sarah felt the weight of her new situation settling over her. She was married to a man she barely knew, protected by a name she'd never expected to carry. But for the first time in months, she felt truly safe. What happens now? She asked, as the familiar red cliffs came into view. Now we live, Running Wolf said, one day at a time. And when Bradley comes back, then he'll find that you're no longer the woman he thought he could intimidate. Sarah touched the simple gold band on her finger, a ring Running Wolf had quietly purchased before the ceremony. I still don't understand why you did this. Running Wolf was quiet for a long moment. My father once told me that we are all broken in different ways. Some of us are broken by violence, others by loss, still others by the cruelty of the world. He said the only way to heal is to help others heal. And you think I'm broken? I think we all are. But I also think we can choose what to do with our broken pieces. We can let them cut us apart, or we can use them to build something new. Sarah looked out over the valley that was now her home, at the man who was now her husband, at the life that was now hers to live. It wasn't the life she'd planned, but perhaps it was the life she needed. Then let's build something new, she said. Running Wolf nodded, and for the first time she saw him smile, a real smile that reached his eyes even behind the mask. Together, he said, we'll build it together. The sun was setting over the Broken Arrow Ranch as they rode home, painting the sky in shades of hope and possibility. Behind them, the past was fading into shadow. Ahead, the future waited to be written, and for the first time in her life, Sarah Mackenzie Santos felt truly free.